Welcome to Time to Teach with Tami, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And we're back. Not only is this episode 11, but this is the first episode in a brand new series, Series 3, entitled Back to School, because guess what? You're probably going back to school at this point. By the time this show airs, I will have started back at school. I start early. Well, I feel like it's early, especially when I talk to other teachers, pretty much in the United States, who a lot of them go back in late August. Some of them have gone back already. Early September, and yeah, I will be returning August 3rd. So it's okay. I'm not sad by it. I'm one of those crazy people who gets really excited to go back. I don't know what's wrong with me. And it's not like it's my first, second, or third year teaching, going to my 9th year, and I still get excited. I think I'm just one of those people who I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and I love the energy that you get at school. There is a special energy, isn't there? It's hard to explain. I'm sure other educators have felt this, but there is an energy that you get at your school that is unlike any other energy, and I love it. So I am very excited with this new series because now that I will be going back to school, I am going to be starting my interviews again. It will take a while before I can start the student segment. I need to get those kiddos comfortable with me, first of all, before I start doing crazy things like interviewing them on my podcast. So that's going to take just a little while. But my plan is to get in and start getting teacher interviews going. So I'm excited for that part too. So today's episode, we are going to be looking at homework. So today's episode is called Rethinking Homework. And yeah, I'm going to go there. I know this is controversial. I know it is the big homework debate, and I don't claim to have all the answers. Clearly, we can't seem to agree on the correct answer even within the field of education. So I will not sit here and pretend that I have all the answers, because I certainly don't. Now, the homework topic is so in-depth that I can't touch on everything in today's episode. In fact, I think we'll definitely have multiple episodes this series on homework, because my hope for this series is to kind of get us rethinking about different things that we might want to change up and things in general as we get the new school year started. And certainly revamping and rethinking the way we do homework is one of those. I am including myself. I'd like to continue my own journey of revamping the homework that I've been giving in class. So I have a real treat for you today. We have an interview, and it is with my sister, Tiffany. And I thought this would be a great way to start off this series because she can give us a perspective of a parent. So here she is. But first note that the audio is not the best in this interview. Unfortunately, it's really my fault because it's the first time I've done a remote interview and not really knowing the correct program and how to get audio. So I really struggled when I went through the playback, and I did go back, try to clean it up, try to amplify the sound, and do what I needed to do to make the audio better, but it's not perfect. So I hope you can look past that because it's still really good. So with us today, we have a very special guest to talk about her perspective on homework from a parent's perspective, because that is what she is. But she's also, she's also my sister, Tiffany.
I am also that. Yes, I am.
Yes, you are.
I am well qualified in both areas.
Yes.
Well-qualified parent.
Uh-huh.
I have about approximately 16, almost 17 years of parenting experience.
This is true.
And 36, 37 years of being your sister. So I do feel that I am highly qualified, and thank you for reaching out.
In all things sisterhood, very good. You didn't have to give that last detail on the age, but I try not to let everyone know.
It was a rough number, just a rough number,
36 or 20, but somewhere in that realm. Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay. I thought it would be really great to get a parent's perspective on homework, and just so the audience knows, we don't know a whole lot about each other's perspective. In fact, I just put the question out there to my sister, Tiffany, if I didn't already say that. Wait, we talked about you a few episodes ago. You might want to go back and listen to it, just so you know. Anyway.
I might have missed that one.
Yeah, you probably did, being that, do you listen to any of my episodes?
If it wasn't in the first one, I have not heard it yet. It's on my to-do.
All right, sister fail.
I beg to differ because you stated that we don't know each other's perspective, and I have to correct you on that. I am well aware of my perspective.
What I meant was I don't know yours and you don't know mine. Sorry if I implied that you don't know your own perspective, because that's
I'm sorry. Yeah, that wasn't very clear.
Okay. For future reference, I will try to be more clear on that. Sorry if I misled anyone. So we don't really know each other's perspective. I put the question out to my sister, just kind of like, hey, what do you think? Do you have any ideas? Because one never knows. And she did have some ideas. And then I said, great, I'm going to interview you. And then do you want to explain what you said to me at that point? You predict.
Sure.
Okay, let's move a little further beyond the sure. You kind of speculated on how you thought your opinions would or would not align with mine. Do you want to elaborate on that? We can pick up our conversation at that point.
Okay. Well, I had mentioned the fact that I don't know necessarily what your opinion or your perspective is on the subject matter. However, I am inclined to believe that it probably differs with mine, because you are a teacher and I am not.
So I'm automatically the enemy? Enemy number one?
Enemy number one on my list.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. You're not practicing in the state, so that might be different. I'm not sure. But would you like me to proceed with my opinion on the subject matter?
Yes. I'm doing this show on rethinking homework, and I am curious. You are a parent, I'm a parent, but I'm also a teacher, so I kind of wanted an unbiased view from a parent's perspective, and it will be very unbiased because for some strange, well, maybe it's not a strange reason, we never really talk school. I'm sure other teachers out there feel the same way. If you have other friends or family members who are not educators, you don't really talk school. So you don't really know all my views. But
they are my friends and family, most of them with exception to you. Not only are my friends and family not educators, but most of them are not educated.
You might want to look into getting some new friends, but that's just a friendly aside. Okay, so non-educated friends, but you yourself are educated and qualified to answer this question. So what is, as a parent, and you have 2 children, and they are how old?
My 16-year-old daughter is 16, will be 17 in October, and my 13-year-old stepson is 13, but he will be 14 in September.
So you have been dealing with issues concerning homework for quite a long time now, almost 17 years. So can you just kind of share your perspective and experience? I mean, just pretty much any thoughts you have. Just what are your thoughts on homework in general?
Okay, thoughts on homework in general. It's an enormous burden to the parents. And the main reason I think it's such an enormous burden is, as a parent, you want your child to succeed and do well. And if they turn in an assignment which is not just incomplete, because number one, I feel like it is the parent's responsibility to, at the bare minimum, make sure they're doing their homework. So you want to make sure it's complete. But if a child turns in their homework and it's not correct, then their grade's going to suffer. And as a parent, you want your child to do the best that they can do. So in order for that to happen, you have to extend an additional amount of your time to try to help them get it correct. And it doesn't matter how many times you ask your child to check their answers, they never do. They, barely do it just to get it done, and then they don't check to see if it's right. So as a parent, you're working all day, you come home, you're tired, you don't have time, it's evening, the only time you have left is to eat and go to sleep. At least this is my schedule. And so extending this little bit of time that you have to basically teach your kids, because I don't know how it works in your home, but my kids can never seem to recall what happened that day in class, and it's based on something happened in school. They zoned out. I don't know. They fell through a black hole, and they just have no idea of what's going on this page and how to answer the questions.
But we have that same experience here in this house. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not unique to my household.
Not unique to your household.
Okay, so that's great. So then, when you, as a parent, when you try to explain this, and number one, especially with math, you got to go back and do a little research on, okay, how do I solve this problem? And then teach it.
I'm so happy to hear you say this about reteaching yourself math, because you are a manager of an accounting department. What do you do again? You're a manager of what?
Accounting manager, yes.
Accounting manager. So clearly you're working with numbers day in and day out, right? You probably dream about numbers.
I actually do dream about numbers.
I figured that you probably did. So presumably you have so much contact time with numbers, you're doing whatever you accountants do in your office all day with numbers. So you're probably pretty good. And
that's what I tell my boss, yeah.
We're going to let your boss continue to believe that until further evidence. So presumably you're good at numbers, but the fact that you have to reteach yourself this math that your child is doing comforts me, because I have the same experience. I mean, there was a time period where literally I had to give up cooking because my daughter, so there was a time period where she was just needing a lot of extra help, and so I had to give up cooking for a while, and I had to teach myself how to do her math. I want to say there was something about trinomials.
Yeah, you're correct, and I think that's one of the areas when they come back with that type of homework. I mean, unless you're doing that day to day, you're not going to remember how to do these trinomials, all these different types of equations, and so that's where it becomes necessary to go back and research and re-teach yourself how you do this, so you can explain it to your child. And then when you start to explain it, you realize they don't teach it the same way anymore. They've revamped the entire system. So not only did they fall into a black hole in classroom, but now they start to recall some areas that the teacher spoke on the subject, and it turns out that the teacher taught it in a completely different way, and now you confuse your child so much that they might have to be held back another year.
How does that make you feel then as a parent who, I heard you say you want your child to complete the homework assignment, you want your child to do well with the homework, and you want to help, but how are you feeling when you're in a situation like that?
I feel as though it's very onerous on the parents. I feel as though there's no realistic way that the student under those circumstances could be held accountable, because the parent knows if I don't help my child to get the best grade that they can on this homework, then they're going to turn it in, and the grade's probably going to be not that great, and their overall grade could be impaired by the homework. So as a parent, you continue to try to help them, but you really don't have time, and you're really not helping them, and the student's really not learning from the parent, and sometimes not even teachers. And so it really just becomes homework for the parents. And so that's problematic.
So
I think having homework is a good thing. I'm not against having homework. Why I think it's a good thing, and not to say that a student or a child should be, spending countless hours of homework, but I think it's a good transition into reality. Reality being your time is not always free. You have responsibility, and you need to be accountable. So I think students should be accountable for their learning, meaning they shouldn't be waiting for their parents to have to help them with the homework in order for them to be accountable and do well. They should be really owning this themselves. How do I think that gets accomplished? I think that gets accomplished by continuing to assign homework. The student is responsible for doing and completing the homework. I think the parent should, hey, do you have homework? Where's your homework? Okay, did you do it? Yes, you did. Okay. I think that should be sufficient for the parent's responsibility, and not to have to be the teacher, because a teacher is a job, and most parents have a job, so you cannot have two jobs and the job of being a parent. So I think that the student should then take their homework, bring it back to the classroom, and then instead of it being a process whereby the homework gets turned in and then you're graded, I think it really should be a collaborative effort. And however it's broken down, if it's one-on-one, if it's in smaller groups with teacher assistants, I think what should happen at that point is the student brings back the homework, and the class with the teacher goes over the solutions with the students and figure out where they went wrong, when they went wrong, and teach them per their current standards how to solve and complete the process, the problems, because that will better serve, I think, both the student in the learning process, and it should give the results, or hopefully better be able to assist in giving the results that the teacher's looking for. And it also shifts the burden from the parent back to the student, where it should be, because that is the student's job, is to learn the material. The student's job is not to just turn in a paper with the correct answers because their mom and dad helped them to get the answers, but on their own they cannot do this. They need to be able to use the resources that they have readily available to them. That's their teachers, that's their books, that's online websites that their teachers probably have, told them that they could use. Use their resources and be accountable for using them and getting the answers themselves. And that's when they start to learn. Because they don't learn anything when mom and dad gives them the right answer. Or if mom and dad says, here, this is where you find the answer right here. They lose the skill of learning how to do it on their own. And I think that this is why so many students are so unprepared when they hit high school, because at least here, I don't know how it works everywhere, you're passed along each grade up until your 9th grade year. You're passed whether you're doing good or bad. They just move you along. And if you can't keep up, once you hit 9th grade, if you can't actually achieve a passing score, you're not going to get moved up. And I don't feel that helps the student. I don't feel like it helps anybody.
Okay, you just said a whole lot that I have been trying not to insert my opinions, because still you don't actually know my opinion on homework, because I just really wanted to hear your thoughts on it without you actually even knowing how I feel about this. But I do kind of want to... Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
One additional thing I want to say before I know your opinion, that I started to touch on, but I don't think I conclude with. The reason why I agree with homework is because I really feel like that helps the student to learn accountability, and it kind of starts setting them up for being responsible, self-discipline. And so, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't need to be hours of homework, but them having a job to do, I think, helps to instill self-discipline in the individual. So that's why I think it's important, and that's why I would like to see it stay.
Well, and then going back to something that you said, because I want to touch on this, but you said something about the homework being correct and getting the child getting a good grade. So do you feel the way that homework currently is implemented, is that happening? Is there an academic benefit? Are they going back into the classroom and going over the work, or what? How do you see this playing out right now?
Well, I think my overall opinion is no, I don't think the process as it is being implemented today is working. I believe from what I see is I don't think the teachers are going over the homework with the students, and that could be different. There could be some really good teachers who are doing that, but overall I don't think that's happening. I think that there's certain areas that a teacher has to get through in any grade level, and so if they don't have time to go through everything or go through all the homework, then maybe they're taking shortcuts because per their standards or per some mandate they have to hit this subject and this subject, whatever the mandates are, and so they're going through the material kind of quickly. So I don't believe that the majority of the teachers are going through the homework with the students. So no, currently I don't feel like it's effective today.
And in terms of the length of homework, because you mentioned that you don't believe that there should be hours and hours, do you feel like right now is there too much homework, or is there a good balance, or what are you experiencing in your own household? One of my kids, it takes them quite a while to do their homework. Okay. But I think there's a lot of other things behind that. I don't believe it's because too much homework is being given. Okay. I think it is because they are behind. My other child has not had too many issues with having countless hours of homework. So overall, I think the amount of homework being assigned has not been an issue. Okay, so I'm wondering, when you say the one child who you think there are other things going on and that maybe because that child is behind, do you think, is that homework appropriate then? Does that homework, working on something that would be maybe above what that child can do, is that going to be beneficial then? Is it just a matter of then that child needs... I think that child should have been... I think it should have been mandatory that child should have been held behind. But because the schools passed them, even when they're not ready, it has served no benefit to this child because they're not ready to be, they're not performing at their current grade level, but they're moving along nonetheless, and so it's getting harder and harder to keep up because they were never ready to move up to the next level to begin with. I think that's what's going on. Okay. So, are you ready to hear my opinion? Yes. This interview is all about you, honey. It's all about you. Before I even say my opinion, I'm curious, what do you think my opinion is? I'm just curious because... I think that you are not for homework. Okay. There you go. That's my opinion. You're right. How did you know that? I think I have a quasi
good grasp on your teaching style. And I know it's not aligned with the today's normal standards.
Or traditional way of doing things. Yeah,
exactly. So I kind of had
a sneaky suspicion
assumed that you were not on board with the traditional standards.
That's pretty much where I personally stand with homework. I have for a long time, even when I first entered teaching, I just have not been a fan of homework. And of course, along the years of being an educator and working with kids and dealing with homework, I just have kind of seen in my personal experience. And again, I'm a teacher of young students, so I think there could be an argument made based on age and grade and where they are in their academic careers, but definitely just with my own personal experience with young learners, the ones who get it, and they're the ones who always do their homework. And then you have ones who are probably struggling on a concept. And I think you tend to see this more with math. And when you're sending like traditional math homework sheets, by the way, I dislike it. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place and it's not appropriate sometimes, but I'm not a fan of that. Those kids who are struggling with the concept, that sheet of paper doesn't help them reach that concept. I just feel like they
lose that sheet of paper.
They'll lose it. They don't do it. You get a note back from the parent that, they didn't understand. And, just all these things that just make it, it's kind of a battle. And so you see that, okay, if this child is struggling in a certain area, a homework sheet doesn't help him or her achieve that concept. It's a matter of maybe presenting the material differently. It's a matter of pulling that student aside and let's work with some manipulatives, or let's work at this a little bit differently. There's some kind of breakdown that, or not necessarily a breakdown, or just a matter of something has to be different. There's something going on here where a homework sheet that's sent home doesn't cut it. It's not teaching them. It's asking them to do something that they're struggling with. And I would also say research does not support that homework helps academically. There's no research that supports it. There is possible benefits when they are older, like possibly high school. And one of the arguments for homework is definitely what you touched on, the accountability and being responsible. Of course, there's also a counter argument that children at home can be given something else by their parents to build a responsibility at home. But I definitely feel like in the older grades, it could be more appropriate. And one thing that makes it very difficult is this is such a hot topic. This is pretty controversial because it is widely debated within the field of education. That's just with educators. And then you start adding, how do students feel? How do parents feel? But just within the field of education, it's you can't get a whole lot of agreement. You just can't. So I'll share with you where we are at our school. We definitely recognize that reading is hugely beneficial to the point where we're not even calling that homework. It's just a requirement. You should, at each grade level, has a certain amount of reading that should be done. And this is at the elementary level. Mind you, I'm at a K through 12 school. So we've got elementary. We actually have early childhood section. We have, so I just lied. I mean, we are actually pre-kinder. So anyway, there's early childhood.
Do you agree with reading being assigned?
Oh yeah, I think that's what they should be doing. They should definitely be reading. I mean, there is evidence. Yeah, there is evidence to support that the more you read, the better of a reader you're going to be. Actually, before we really made this move, that was always my feeling. Like, I just want my students reading more than anything else. I just want them reading. So yeah, we try not to call it homework, but it's really difficult because the other thing is, if parents or students don't necessarily see it as homework, then they might think it's, oh, I have the option, where it's like, no, it's not an option. This is required. We just don't want to call it homework. It's a little play on semantics and how you approach it that way. But that's definitely been one of the challenges. And we also went away from assigning math. So this was actually, last school year was our first year this way, approaching homework differently, where we said we weren't really getting rid of homework, but we wanted to approach it in a different way, because we don't want our young students have just spent a whole long day at school. And then most of our students, they're not done when the school day's over. Oh, no. They've got soccer practice, or they've got tennis, and then some of them are going to a language school, so they're learning another language. I mean, these kids are super busy. This is probably very particular and specific to my school, but my student population, these kids have a full schedule. Their schedules are busier than mine. So they're spending a whole day in school. They're spending all their whatever activities they have in extracurricular activities after school, and then go home and do homework. So it's a really long day, and they also need to sleep. And even more importantly, well, not more important than sleep, but very important, they need time with their families. That's been one of the things too that I think makes homework very difficult, especially when it's a child who's struggling over this math sheet or whatever it is. It's taking away, they're feeling frustrated. So feeling frustrated, they feel like, oh, I can't do this. This can decrease their sense of confidence and self-worth, and it can cause frustrations between the child and whatever parent is doing homework with that child. And that's even something that I have experienced at home. It's been very difficult, even though I'm a teacher. I think most teachers know that when you're working at home with your child, it's a very different dynamic. You kind of bump heads a lot.
And I kind of tend to agree at the elementary level that there would be a different level of expectation regarding homework versus a student at the middle school or high school level. I definitely feel middle school level is most definitely appropriate to assign homework. And I'm not even saying that I don't agree with it in elementary, but I think that the level of homework should definitely be altered, of course, and I know that it is. But I guess I feel as though I would be okay, even if it's grade kindergarten through third. I'm not even sure at what grade I think it should be implemented, but if maybe the first 3 years the child didn't have homework, I would kind of agree with that. I mean, at that age, I don't know that it would be effective, because they haven't developed enough to really start the whole, I don't know that they would be old enough to really reap any benefit trying to establish discipline on homework, versus in the late elementary years or in middle school, where they are more aware of their surroundings and they've developed a little bit more and they could really start taking ownership.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I'm not completely opposed to the older grades, and like I said, the research, there really hasn't been anything showing that homework is that there's any academic benefits, except for maybe once you're getting into like high school age. So I can see that being more beneficial once they're getting older, but definitely, and again, I'm not saying no homework. In fact, one thing that we're doing is for math, instead of sending so many homework sheets. Like if you just think about what math traditionally and typically would look like, what math homework would look like, you get a sheet.
Yeah, usually they have a sheet, maybe, a double-sided sheet, and they're assigned the odd problem.
Yes.
Or the even problems. Like I see something like that, and it's not a ridiculous amount. Mm-hmm. And so I've never, at least not that I recall, I don't ever recall, thinking, wow, this is just way too much. I thought, wow, this is taking you a really long time, but I've never really thought, you can't do it. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, I am against the whole traditional way of doing homework because I just feel like, and you've touched on so many of the reasons why I am against it, because it has to be correct. You want them to get a good grade, but does that really mean that they're learning it? I
contend that they're not learning it, and I also believe that a lot of the time it's easier when they're it's easier when they're getting help from their parents, because their parents are either just giving them the answer because they don't have the time to explain it, and it also their explanation contradicts the way it's being taught in school. So the easiest and quickest thing to do is just provide the answer, or the parent is providing you with the correct resource to obtain the answer, saying, hey, look here, you can get it from here. And in my opinion, that takes away from the learning experience, because when you learn is when you have to actually rely on yourself to go and retrieve the information you need from the different resources that are available. So that includes identifying the resources yourself,
which is a skill.
Identifying the resources and being able to utilize the resource. So number one, being disciplined enough to utilize the resource, and then having the capability to digest it in such a manner that they could extract the correct information and then articulate it back.
And then I would also question, we're talking about us as parents having to go back and reteach us the math. Well, we're, pretty successful adults, I feel, right? I mean, you and I have gone to college, and I'm not saying anyone who hasn't is not successful, but I mean, in terms of we're educated persons and we're doing pretty well in life. We both have careers, but we had to go back and reteach it. So clearly this isn't something, and I don't want to insinuate that they never use this in life, but if we're having to go back and reteach ourselves, I wonder if what they're doing isn't very applicable to real life. That's another question that I have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like a lot of it is not. A lot that's being taught is just because it's mandated, but I mean, unless it might be very relevant for certain people depending on what field they get into, but there's only so many different fields, and it's very difficult to work and be an expert at all the different fields. Most people, you're going to enter the workforce in one field, and then that becomes the field that you become an expert in, or really good at and focus on. And all the other subject matters that aren't as relevant, that you really use on a day-to-day basis, just becomes not relevant. And not to say that they might not have been important, and not to say that maybe it wasn't a good thing for you to have been taught, but are they all relevant? I don't think so.
Yeah, and even just the way that it's being taught. I'm thinking, I keep going back to math because I think that's where you can very clearly see this illustrated, at least I do, in terms of, is this relevant? But even the way that students do math or have been doing math, it seems like you learn how to do these formulas. I think back to my own experience as a math student. I learned how to do a formula, but I at this point would have to relearn it right now. So yeah, I can be successful at plugging some numbers in, but I honestly don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know what any of it means. That's where I feel like maybe the way...
But also in the real world, you don't necessarily have to have memorized all these things. In the real world, what you rely on is your ability to research and find out how you solve whatever the problem is, whatever the use cases you're solving for. You're allowed to go and research it. And I think that that's a normal way in any field. Is you don't always know the answer, but if you know how to get there, I think that's the biggest thing. And then figure out the solution. Because I think I see that on a day-to-day life. I know that's certainly true in the accounting world.
Yeah, and
a lot of accounting world are out there, and you can't memorize it all. So you have to identify what the problem is, identify what it is that you're looking for, and then identify where you need to start researching to get the answer. But I would like to speak just a little bit to the math. I do believe, especially in today's modern world, that it's more and more relevant. We're moving towards technology. I think engineering and technology is going to grow even more. I mean, those are huge fields right now. And because of that, I think math does play a very big role. But that's just an enormous field that I think our society is moving towards is technology, and you don't achieve technology without the engineering and without the math behind it.
Right, and I'm not saying that that's not important. I'm just, my whole thing in thinking about me as a math learner is I'd like to understand what I'm doing. You know, so anyone who's going to go into those fields, they have to have a pretty good understanding of what in the world they're actually doing. So I'd like to see math in terms of homework be more applicable to how would this look in what I'm doing in my life, or how would I do not just, okay, solve. And I think Professor Joe Bowler...
Or even explain to the student in what fields or where they would use this and how this would be relevant.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff, you know, in algebra and even calculus, although I know that you use that a lot in economic type of thing, but you're doing what they're teaching you, but you don't know where and when you will use it and when it becomes relevant. But I think that if they were granted the knowledge of knowing how it would make a difference to them, or in what field, at what point it matters, becomes relevant, I think that may add some more interest and maybe help, you know, make it kind of stick a little bit better because you start seeing the importance of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would add even giving the, you know, having students work on problems that they're actually solving so that they understand what they're doing instead of, you know, kind of taking away from just plugging in these formulas, but actually solving something. And then, you know, you might need the formula to solve this, but at least you have a better understanding of what you're doing. One thing that we did with our change in math homework, and again, I'm a pre-first teacher, so my learners are, you know, 5 and 6, pretty much. Math that we do, I don't want to say it's simple, because even though we think it is, of course, when you're first developing these skills and concepts, they're not necessarily simple. But what we've done with our math homework, gone are the days that we're sending home the math homework sheets, like 5 plus 4, whatever the math problem is. But it's what it's been this last year, like I said, this was our first year kind of revamping our homework, is, you know, how many different ways can you make the number 10, and having them use whatever they have at home. They can use beans, they can use pasta, if they have blocks, whatever. Just how many different ways can you make the number 10? So now all of a sudden it's still, you know, working on the number 10, but instead of giving them addition problems, they can actually see that a number is a quantity, because I think that's one of the things in the early grades as they're developing number sense. When you go straight into just let's work on answering all these math problems, they don't get initially that those numbers are actual quantities. So they have to see that, okay, 5 is an actual number. That means there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and I can add 4 to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a number. It represents a quantity, and I can come up with a number 9, which it represents 9 things. So I have felt that this way of doing math, doing those kind of math problems, has been so very beneficial for the students, as opposed to, okay, we're going to work on the number 10, so I send you a homework sheet and it's different facts of 10. So that's one of the things that we've done that I have felt that has really helped students develop number sense, because they're actually looking at the quantities and they are playing with it. And then as they develop through the year, then it's like, okay, make this number, draw it, represent it in a number sentence. So that's been very successful, I have felt. And at first I wasn't sure. I thought, we'll see how the school year goes. But and another thing is, I went away from math sheets in my classroom. We did 2 math sheets. So that was kind of my experiment last school year. So aside from just moving away from those math worksheets, which we've always done a lot of manipulatives, which I feel like you kind of do a lot more probably in the earlier grades, and I think they should be working with things. But so we went away from that in the classroom. We did like maybe 2 worksheets the whole school year. Every concept we did, they were building, they were creating, they were manipulating, and my students did well. And that was kind of my experiment to see, okay.
They sound like great manipulators.
They are great manipulators.
That's a job well done there.
What can I say? Yeah. So, and then some of the upper elementary grades have done a lot of like math games. So math became kind of optional, but of course, if there was a student who maybe teachers felt like they could benefit, it would be through math games that they would send home, and that would be their math homework instead of like just giving them a homework sheet. So those are my thoughts on homework, and it's one thing that I really encourage teachers to kind of ask themselves is, what kind of math am I sending home? What is the purpose? And what
do the teachers actually have that level of authority? I mean,
yeah,
maybe they do. I'm asking because I really don't know.
The teachers
is it really up to the?
Well, the teachers at my school in my section, yes, because this is a movement that we went to last year, is totally revamping, but knowing that it was our first year approaching homework like this. But now if you're asking teachers elsewhere, maybe not. It probably depends on what their school and their principal is asking of them. No, teachers don't always have that flexibility because there might be a requirement made of them. Another obstacle that we have as teachers is parent expectations. I mean, some parents want the homework. You know, they don't want you to stop giving them traditional homework because that's what they know. That's what they've done. I mean, I even had, I'm just thinking back to one of my parent-teacher meetings, and a parent was very adamant about wanting the traditional homework back. And, I pretty much had to say, I had to defend why our section went in that direction, and I said, I'm going to be very honest with you. You know, the reason why the elementary section went in this direction was because there's not any research that supports academic gains based on the traditional way of doing homework. So that's why I'm not sending your child those typical math sheets, because that we were specifically talking about the math, which, I am sending math, not in the traditional way, but I said if you have your child working on this kind of math that I'm sending home, that's going to develop the number sense that we're really trying to build strong at this level. Because once they have a strong number sense, it helps them with later math. but a lot of kids get through the school years kind of learning how to plug numbers in and get the answer, but they don't know what that answer means. So that's why we focus.
What was the parents' response to you?
Accepted it. She accepted it when I explained it to her, or at least with me. You know, I don't know how accepting at home, but that is one of the things that we do have to, you know, try to balance is parents have certain expectations. So when you go totally away from traditional, especially here in Mexico, you know, it's education in terms of progress is very slow moving. So things in general are more traditional. That's a little bit different at our school because obviously we're an American school. So we have American curriculum. We have English speaking teachers. 50% of our teaching staff our faculty are from English speaking countries. So of course they bring in a lot of what they have experience too. So I feel like our school, if you compare it to other schools in Mexico, is going to be a little more progressive in that way, but it's still very traditional, and parents are, and it's no fault of their own, but they're coming in with their expectations of this is how I did homework, this is what I expect my child should be doing. And I also explained to the parent that she definitely is more than welcome to give her child homework sheets. I would not, but she's more than welcome to supplement. And I, you know, defended our position and also explained how the manipulatives were much more beneficial than a sheet. Basically, my opinion is most sheets are going to record your answer. That's how they're going to serve their purpose best. It's a sheet to record your answers, but it's not necessarily a sheet where concepts are developed. Those are my thoughts. All right. Well, I think we hashed that out as best as we can. I mean, I think the homework debate is going to continue to be very well debated, but it was definitely a good discussion, and I enjoyed hearing your perspective as a parent because that's what I was interested in. I, of course, have a perspective from a teacher's point of view and a parent's point of view, but I was interested on hearing just a parent's point of view, someone who's not coming into this from a teacher's perspective at all.
Well, I'm glad I could offer my just a parent perspective for you.
Yeah, you did, and you did that very well. Okay, well,
accountant.
Yes, parent/accountant perspective. Let's throw that in so it's not just parent. Well, I so appreciate you taking your time because I know time is of the essence for you, for most people too.
Yes, it is, especially because I took PTO today, so I was available to...
Do you want to explain that acronym to other people who might feel a little frazzled like me when you start throwing your acronyms out at the world?
Sure. Now, most people I know of in my world know PTO.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I feel very good about myself in this moment as you say that, but go on.
It's paid time off. What do you teachers call it?
Summer vacation. I don't know. We don't get paid time off. We don't. I mean, yes, we get personal days. And we have sick days. But most teachers I know do not take those days if they can avoid it because, you know.
Well, but that's different. That's different than PTO. So you guys call it. I mean, how does it look on your check stub? Is it just vacation?
I don't know. Honestly, how does that look? I don't even know how it looks. I don't know how it looks. I think I took one sick day last school year, and because I was sick, so I'm going to assume it showed up as sick day, and I'm going to assume a personal day shows up as a personal day.
Yeah. So I'm just curious what your summer looks like if you were over to view your stub, which is probably accessible to you online somewhere.
Oh, I mean, it doesn't look any different than my normal pay stub. So
it's not under a category?
No, I don't think so. Half the time I don't pick up my pay stubs, and yes, I have received threatening emails about that. Just kidding, although I have received emails. Yeah, it would have been you, but yes, accounting does not like that. But so I don't know. I don't think I've examined it that deeply, but I don't think it looks too much different. Boy, now you got me interested, and now I feel like I need to go back and investigate.
Well, my world,
it does as an accountant. Yeah.
Different world.
Yes.
Teachers.
Yeah.
But regardless, so I'm on PTO today, and so I'm happy to be spending it with you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so glad that you decided to spend it with me. I'm not sure you had a choice, but you did. You were a good sister. You were a very good sister and agreed to come on my show and do that. But yeah, it's going to look reluctantly. Yeah, she reluctantly agreed. So yeah, so thank you for explaining PTO. Thank you for coming on the show. And this is, I'll tell you when it airs so you can listen.
Please do.
Well, you just sound so enthusiastic. Yes. I will. You can bet your life on that, honey. Okay, well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to go ahead and close out this interview. So, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks for allowing me.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, stay on the line. Bye-bye. Don't hang up. Bye-bye.
I don't know what to do anymore.
Well, there you have it, our interview with Mrs. Tiffany Pollari. I really felt that it was necessary to hear from a parent's perspective and get a feeling about their authentic experience with homework in their own house. And she's not a teacher, so she doesn't have maybe her own preconceived notions about homework from a teacher's perspective. So I thought it was really important to hear from an actual parent and what that parent was experiencing. So obviously we didn't really answer any big questions. We were just able to see another perspective. And I think that's important to keep in mind as we begin the new school year and we start rethinking and revamping our own homework practices and just start thinking about, even though I feel like homework, I'm not a fan of it, I do think there are ways to do it correctly and make it meaningful. So if we are sending it out, what are we doing with it? How are we sending out? What does it look like? Are we doing anything with it when it comes back? I think those are good questions to contemplate and just, reflect upon as we start the new school year. So this conversation is to be continued because we can't conquer it all in one episode. Now, you absolutely do not want to miss next week's show. Episode 12, we are going to meet with the one, the only, Miss Amy Buchanan. She is our instructional math coach at my school, and she was very instrumental in getting our elementary section to revamp the way we do homework. So she is going to talk to us about where this came from, some of her ideas and experience, and we will get to hear from her all about homework. So we'll continue our conversation then. I'll see you there. Bye-bye. Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.